So again, we're going to be talking about inventory. Now there's a few things that you need to know when it comes to inventory, all right? The different types of programs that you use for QuickBooks actually allows you to be able to do certain parts when it comes to inventory. In the 2018 inventory section here, because the whole premises of learning through this particular book is you're actually geared towards learning Premiere 2018, which is really weird because you guys end up downloading Accountant 2018. But my previous students from my past class in August actually download Premiere 2018. So I don't know why all of a sudden the switch was made. So with that being said, now Premiere and Accountant, they can and have the capabilities to do inventory assembly. All right. So for you guys that downloaded the program, you guys have the 2018 Accountant. You guys can practice this. It's when we get to the inventory assembly, there is a page that says that you could utilize to practice how to set up and how to create your items. But because I'm using Pro 2019, unfortunately, I don't have the inventory assembly. But that's okay. It's not a primarily huge part of your exam. I will explain what it is and how to be able to do it, but I'm not going to be able to do it for you guys or to show you how to get it done. Okay, so that's going to be something that you're going to have to do a little reading on your own in that little section. Now, with that being said, when we actually look at inventory, right? We create our inventory by using our items. So here we are at items and services. And in order to create a new item, again, you go ahead and click new and you have your options here on what kind of item you want to create. So again, because Academy Photography, right, we do have both service and products, right? Our service is primarily geared towards our photo sessions, right? We have hourly. We have someone that walks around with a camera, takes pictures, right? That's based on a time. It's a service. But we also sell other things such as cameras, lenses. We even sell the picture frames that you can, after you've done your photo shoot, you could choose one and have it in a nice picture frame, right? We also have a non-inventory part. Now, what is a non-inventory part? Okay? Now, in the best way I can describe an inventory part versus a non-inventory part is pretty much how I would describe it as periodic and perpetual. Okay? However, in QuickBooks, it also uses periodic and perpetual as well. Now, but this is the best way I could explain it because when we're looking at an inventory part, okay, it's primarily something that we sell on a daily basis or something that we sell frequently. So this item is important enough for us to keep track of how many we have, how much is in stock, and how much do we need to keep reordering for, okay? Where a non-inventory part is kind of those items that you don't normally sell on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you sell it every week. Maybe you sell it every month. So for those kind of items, you generally don't really care to keep track of it. All right? It's one of those things that, again, if I don't sell the item as often, then I don't need to keep track of it because, it doesn't appear on my sales form as often as I like it for it to be. It's an item I don't sell every day. So it's one of those things that I don't care to keep track of. But I will notify me when I do reach below capacity or when I reach that point where I need to buy more. But it's the concept of I'm only going to buy maybe like four orders at one time. And, if I'm doing low quantities, then I can automatically assume that every time I make a sale, I'm usually only selling maybe 1 or 2 at a given time. So it's something that I don't really keep track of. And we'll get to take a look at this, especially when we're dealing with inventory and what kind of items that we want to categorize it. Is it something that we often sell, or is it something that we do sell, but we don't care too much to keep track of it? That's the difference between an inventory part and a non-inventory part. And if we learn from accounting, that's exactly how we apply periodic and perpetual, right? Perpetual, we're constantly updating it. We're constantly making sure that when we purchase the items, we know how many we purchase. When we sell the items, we know how many we sell. So we know at the end of the day how much items we have truly. Okay? Where periodic is, oh, we'll just go check it every once in a while. I don't care to keep track of it when I make a sale. So that's why I think the best way to understand the inventory and the non-inventory is based off of the idea of periodic versus perpetual inventory. Okay? However, first thing I gotta say too is that yes, in this kind of way, when we keep track of our inventory, we actually keep track of it in a perpetual manner. So again, because every single item that we are creating, you're going to notice we're going to be linking three items or 3 accounts. We're going to be linking our cost of goods sold, our inventory asset account, and we're also going to link our sales. So every time we utilize that item, whether we're making a purchase order, whether we're making a sale, or whether we're entering it in as a bill, right? We are going to use that item, and it's going to constantly keep track of every single thing for you. You don't need to make a list or anything, okay? It's going to keep track for you, and it's going to do it in a perpetual manner, all right? So that means no matter where you are at any given time, you will know how much you have on inventory on hand without physically having someone go down to the basement and actually collect that information for you. But again, it is a good business practice that you do have somebody that goes down to just ensure no one took anything or no one sold something and forgot to record it. So that is going to be important for you guys to know. Now, as you can see on page 230 here, we have a little diagram of what happens when you make purchase of inventory. What does it do when you actually write out a sale of an inventory? How do you enter it in as a bill, etc., etc. But we can go ahead and skip that part because I'm going to actually demonstrate you on how to utilize QuickBooks to keep track of your inventory. Okay, so first things first is we need to make sure that our inventory is even active. Okay, so I can tell if my inventory is active by looking at my home page. My home page right here, I can see this track right here that allows me to make my purchase orders, to retrieve my items, and to also enter a bill against my inventory. So I know for sure that my inventory is active. But if I don't see this section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit Preferences, and I'm going to go to Inventory and Items, okay, or Items and Inventory, and I'm going to go to Company, and the first thing you see here is to activate, well, in this case, it's already activated, inventory and purchase orders are active, right? If I select that, that means my inventory is no longer available, or my purchase section is no longer available. And I can see that by popping up my home page and noticing that the whole top section is gone, all right? So that's how you know whether you have inventory on or off. And in this case, I have it off. Now I'm activating it again, and I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to click OK because it's important that you save your settings. So once now that it's now active again, go back to my home page. It is now, the workflow is there. Okay? So that's just activating it in the first place. Okay? All right. Now the next section here is to create a new item. So here's a little fun fact. In 2018, you guys have what's called an inventory center. Okay, so you guys have an inventory center. So if you look on the page, it will show you what the inventory center actually looks like. Okay, so let me take a look at the inventory center. So here it is. The inventory center looks just like this. Now, fun fact here is in 2019, they got rid of the inventory center because you can enter in all your items by using the items and services. So the whole purpose of having an inventory center, apparently to QuickBooks, was no longer needed. So they decided to just get rid of it in 2019 in general. Okay, so in this case, there is no inventory center for 2019, but in 2018, that is going to be one of the ways that you enter in whatever you need to enter. Okay, now that doesn't mean I can't find or search or do anything beyond that. I could still do the same thing. I could still enter in my items because ultimately your inventory center is more or less the same thing as your items and services list. Okay? It gives you the account balances in each one, right? It gives you a list of which ones are your items and products that you sell. So essentially the inventory center and the items and services are pretty much the same thing. Okay? The only difference is you're not really looking into how much details there is in regards to the actual item itself. You don't know how many items are left. All you have is just an account balance. Okay, that's okay because we can do reports to find out how much we actually have. So, and we'll talk about the reports at the end of the chapter, but that's just something that you need to know, that 2019 does not have an inventory center, but for 2018 you do. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to create our first item here. So again, same thing, as long as you're in the items and services, you can create a new item by going to the item at the bottom, clicking new. You can also right click and click new as well. Okay, and the more hidden one is going to be in your vendors section under inventory activities, and you can create your new item here. Okay, so this one is actually mentioned in your book per se for creating a new item this way. Okay, but since I'm already here, I'll just go ahead and click that, and you're going to get that same window that we've practiced on in chapter 7 and in chapter 7. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our first item, which is going to be an inventory part. Okay, because it's going to be something that we often sell, and we're going to create an inventory part. All right, let's see what the first thing it says here is, that we're going to name the item. So in this case, it's going to be 5 by 7 x 7. Is it frame wooden? Frame wood?
Yes.
Okay. 5 by 7 frame wood. Okay. Or I think it might be wood frame.
Either way.
Okay. And then here in the description, it's pretty straightforward. Picture frame, or I guess five by 7 picture frame, wooden. Okay. All right. So, as I mentioned before, when you create an inventory item or an inventory part, you're going to be looking at a few things here. So first things first is, let's go ahead and go on the right side. Now it says manufacturer's part number. Now what is that? This is going to be something when you sell a product, they have, or when you sell a product, right, and you're purchasing it from the original manufacturer. The original manufacturer is going to have like some kind of identification number. So, for example, you go to the grocery store, right? The barcode is going to be the manufacturing number because every barcode scan has a different unique serial number to them. That's going to be a manufacturing number. Now, is it necessary that you have to have one? Absolutely not. You don't need to have it because, it's not necessary unless you want to keep track of it. But even if you don't have it, it's not going to affect your expenses, your income, or any information. It's just being more detailed on what products you sell. Now, it's only special case if, let's say, for example, you sell iPhones, right? You need to make sure that you sell a specific serial number to a specific person. You can't just give them any iPhone and not register the phone. You need to actually register the identification number to the actual person who's purchasing it, and you need this manufacturing number for that reason. Okay, so there you go. There's that one right there. Okay. Then the next section down here is going to be, well, what under the descriptions are you going to have? Now, there's one that's going to be on your purchasing forms and one that's going to be on your actual sales form. So when we look at this, right, because we put the description here, it automatically copied it right over here. This only allows you to give you an opportunity to kind of differentiate what you write on purchase forms versus what you write on your sales forms. So for this one, the sales forms could be more formatted, more formally saying, well, this is actually a wooden 5x7 picture frame versus 5x7 picture frame wooden. Wording on a statement or on a sales form, it can be important, and it's just to show that these details are linked to the same exact product. So that's all that is. It doesn't really matter what you have listed here. If you want to have it different from your purchase orders from your sales form, you may do so by changing whatever you want on this side. Okay. And then lastly, I talked about those 3 things, the 3 accounts that you're going to be linking this item to. So let's start from the left side and work our way to the right side. First thing we're going to do is we need to associate how much this item is going to cost me. In this case, the book tells me this wooden frame costs me $5. Okay, so each picture frame I purchase is $5. Okay, and by putting that in here, that means every time I sell an item, it's going to cost me $5 to sell it, right? Without the markup selling price, right? And then it's going to ask you, well, what preferred vendor do you normally make these purchases from? Now, yes, this is optional as well. You don't need to link it unless you only purchase picture frames from one person and one person only. Okay? If you have multiple vendors, then you don't need to specify the preferred vendor. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put Ace Supply because he is technically the person I buy almost everything from. Okay? All right. Then the next bottom part is going to be the inventory information. So when we make purchases of inventory, okay, when we make purchases of inventory, what account are you going to actually link it to? In this case, I'm going to link it straight to my inventory asset account, which is an asset account. right? In this case, my account, in the chart of accounts, it's listed as inventory asset. And if you break down your inventory asset to even further, then you can be more specific and say, this is my picture frames. Okay. So again, inventory asset is a broad, account, but again, these items are meant to be considered kind of like your sub accounts, right? It's dividing and making it more descriptive on how many inventory items you actually sell. In this case, I'm creating the 5x7 wooden frame. Okay. Then we're going to move up here real quick. So now the next thing is going to be the selling price. Well, I'm going to sell my picture frames for $9.99. Okay, I'm going to get almost 100% profit. I think it's about like 90 something percent. Because out of this, if it cost me $5 and I'm selling it for $9.99, right, almost close to $10, right, I'm going to be pocketing $4.99, almost $5. So that's what I want my pricing point to be, okay? And because it is a product I'm selling, it's automatically going to be taxed, okay? Unless for any reason that you're selling a service, that's when you do a service type and it's tax exempt. But in this case, it's an actual legitimate product. So it's going to be taxed. And the next thing is you're going to link it to a sales account, which in this case is just sales. Okay. Now I completed that part. Now the bottom half down here says what is going to be my reorder point. This is when you're going to tell QuickBooks to say when inventory drops below a certain amount, you're going to have a reminder to remind me to order more items because I'm reaching a low point. And in this case, I want it to remind me at 20. Okay. Now the next section is more left, is this part right here is going to be something that we talk about later on today, but it's also meant for you to utilize when you start setting up your business, right? It gives you the option to create an on-hand balance, right? If you're starting your company with QuickBooks, but you've existed and you have pre-existing inventory, this is where you're actually going to allow it to tell you, saying I have 10 on hand and it cost me for a total value of, I don't know, $25, right? So yes, you can do that, but general rule of thumb is you should not. You should just leave it as is, and when you do have those items, you'll either enter them in using the enter bills window, which we'll talk about in a second, or you can actually adjust your inventory, which we'll talk about in a couple sections after this, on adjusting your inventory. So yes, you can fill those in, but for now we're leaving them blank. And then we're going to click OK. Then we're going to click OK. And there it is. It pops up right here. So I have two things here. I have a 5x7 wooden frame. Hold on, where's my other one? Oh, it's supposed to be frame. Oh, don't worry. I can always fix that by double clicking it and changing it. It's actually supposed to be frame 5x7 wood. Okay, and then I can just save it just right there, and now I populate frame 5x7 metal and frame 5x7 wood. So yes, you can change the title at any given time as long as you know what is what and you don't, and yeah, you know. Okay, any questions on creating items? We looked at this before. No. Any questions? No. Okay, good. So let me see what the next section is. You can, I think we did practice creating a non-inventory part. We got to create the cameras, but in this case, it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and skip that section because we already know how to do it. Okay. So now that we finally finished entering in our item, the next section is now it's actually going to talk about how we actually cost out our items. So every time we sell an item, right, we have to figure out what method is going to work best for us when we actually compute how much cost of goods sold we're going to be calculating. So for this one, when we actually look into the different QuickBooks, we're going to learn that Pro, Premier, and Accountant only deals with average costing. Okay? So, great thing about this as well is we're not going to be dealing with any of the numbers at all. All we're dealing with is making our purchase orders, selling our items, and recording it. We're not going to be physically calculating that. And if you guys remember us calculating all the different types of methods that we learned, right? We learned that there was FIFO, right? First in, first out method. We learned that there was LIFO, last in, first out method. We learned the weighted average, the moving average, and we learned that specific ID does exist. But in this QuickBooks, because we're dealing with Pro, Premier, and Accounting, all you need to know is it's going to be cost at an average. So it's going to be average costing when we sell our items and we calculate how much cost of goods sold we actually incurred. So in this case, it makes everything so easy, so much more easier to deal with because we're not dealing with the other methods. Now, again, the methods that I've talked about that I've mentioned, right? FIFO, LIFO, specific ID. There's actually a list of beyond what kind of costing methods that exist out in the world. Okay, there is so many out there, but the common ones that we normally see is FIFO, LIFO, and average, right? But if you want to use that because it just works better for your type of company, right? So, for example, a grocery store, you don't want to cost everything average at an average cost, especially if you sell perishable goods. It makes no sense for you to have to make everything an average cost. You definitely want to sell your first item, your first batch first because they perish. So, with that kind of understanding, unfortunately, the only program that's compatible to be able to do beyond that, so be able to do the beyond the doing the FIFO, LIFO, and all those other ones, is going to be the Enterprise, and yes. I don't think online does not have the capability to do that, unfortunately, because you're limited on your packages, of course. Like, what can you do for transactions? So online's going to vary. Online will vary on what you want in your package. You can select what you need and what you want. So for sure, it says right here that Enterprise Solutions can use the first in, first out rule. Okay, it can also use the other methods such as calculating. What is this one? It says inventory value. Okay, I've never heard of that method, but if you'd like to know more about it, definitely go look into corporate inventory methods, okay? But unfortunately, only Pro, Premier, and Accountant only does average costing, okay? It says so right here. All right. So now that we understand that the tracking method's going to be perpetual, the costing method is average costing, okay? So now we can see how the process of having inventory, how it affects your inventory, how do we make our purchases of inventory, and how it goes through the sales process. So first things first is there are two ways you can actually obtain inventory and also by selling them as well. But we'll talk about it in a second. Okay. Wait, so before we move on, is there any questions in regards to anything I just said?
No.
Okay. Okay. So again, this is it's pretty much review for you guys because we all know about inventory. So now understanding how, so we're gonna ignore this real quick. How do we even get inventory? There are two ways you can actually get inventory. You can either purchase it using the purchase orders, which is highly recommended, especially if you're using QuickBooks. That way, you don't need to adjust your inventory. You don't need to micromanage your inventory. Okay, it's the best way, and it converts it and pulls it and it adds the inventory for you automatically. The second one is to actually make purchases of inventory, whether you go to the actual physical store or you're not making a purchase order, you're just actually buying it at time of purchase and you're paying for it right then and there. Then that you can either write a check for that, pay with credit card, whatever, right? That's another way that you can obtain inventory. And we'll talk about those both ways in a second, okay? Now, there's also talking about the ways that you can use invoicing for the sale of your inventory items, right? Again, we talked about the sales process, right? Chapter 2. We talked about how you actually sell your products and by using the inventory items and using the invoice form, right? You just have the sales form readily available and you select under the items which items you're actually going to be selling. So in this case, this is a perfect example. Okay, we'll look at this in a second, but this is an example of how you use a sales form to go ahead and calculate your to how do you utilize this to calculate your the items and how do you get rid of them. So let's go ahead and do this example real quick since the book says to go ahead and enter it anyway. So we're going to create a invoice. How do we create an invoice?
Well, you can hit the create invoice on homepage.
All right. Okay. So in your book, it says that we're selling to a Mr. Jerry Perez. So again, you can just type in J and E, and his name should pop up. Okay. There he is, Jerry Perez. Okay. I believe his class is Walnut Creek. Okay. And this sale was made when?
April 30th, 2019.
April. Oh, okay. Well, we gotta go way back in past. Okay, so let me do a lot of clicking here. April 30th of 2019. Okay. Okay. Invoice is fine, right? The number's 106. He doesn't have any terms or anything like that except for net 30. So again, here we're able to enter in the item number or the item itself. You can also enter how many this person wants the items for. So I believe he wanted 2 of the metal frames.
Well, there is a PO number on this one too.
Oh, there is? Okay, what is the PO number?
70407.
704707.
No, 07.
Perfect. Okay, so there you go. Here you go. I said I wanted the items for the metal frames to be sold. He bought 2 of them from me. Again, because we marked it as the price of it to be $5.99, which we never set up the metal, but it is automatically fill in for you. We know that it's going to be taxed. Okay, so that's very important that you know this. Here, let me show you all of this since everything's so bunched up. Okay, so here you go. It is taxed, right? So here he has the $5.99 because he bought 2 of them. It gives me a grand total of $11.98 plus my tax here, okay, of 99 cents because we know that he's going to be from Contra Costa. And there you go. Everything looks good. So, of course, I'm going to write a little message to my customer. Thank you for doing it for your business. Okay. And I'm also going to indicate here that he bought 2 metal picture frames. And then I'm going to go ahead, save, and close. So now I build Mr. Jerry Perez for selling those 2 types of things. So now that we've completed that transaction, right, we can go ahead and look at our reports to determine what happened to that transaction. So I believe if you wanted to look at that transaction, you would go ahead and do a transaction analysis form here, which it says here that we're going to be looking at, we're going to be going to Jerry Perez itself. Okay, so here I'm at my customers. I'm going to go ahead and go click Jerry Perez. Where is he? Fang, Mason. There you go, Jerry Perez. Right? And then we're going to go list all of the transactions. Actually, wait, hold on. I don't think your book says that. Let me look at my book again. Creating a transaction journal. So we're going to go to display invoices. Oh, okay. So I can't remember now. So now we're going to view all his transactions. So then we can see every single one of them. Here you go, invoices. We're going to double click the invoice, okay? And we see that we sold something to him. So now we're going to go up to the top and we're going to find our transaction journal. And we're going to utilize that to go ahead and view how this actual transaction happened. Okay, let me see. Okay, reports. You go to reports at the top, and then here you go, transaction journal. And this is basically, you get to see what happened here. Okay, you see that this person purchased from us, etc., etc., and how much items is sold. So that's how you do the transaction analysis. It's not super big on this one, but it's just to show you how to do it, okay? Just so that you can follow his transactions and what actually happened here. All right, so that's just a little minor thing that they talk about, but that's how you do it. You have to go look up the actual invoice and go to report section and run a transaction journal. Okay, but again, that's not super important as far as understanding too much anything about that. What I really want you guys to actually see is going to be actually utilizing the reports, the actual reports that we're running. So if you actually look, which we'll talk about at the very end of this chapter, so we'll put that off aside for a second, and we'll come back to it when we reach the report section. So again, here, we're going to talk about how to utilize the purchasing inventory. So we talked about the 2 ways that we can enter in the inventory, right? One of them is to straight away enter it in as if you're writing a check to a specific person for a specific item, okay? So we looked at writing checks before, but the only difference between writing our checks is that we are actually going to be writing it out for a specific item, okay? So again, I'm going to go to my home page. I'm going to go ahead and click my write checks window, okay? So first thing I want to do is we're actually going to make sure that this is checking, and it is for Mr. Wong and Son video. Okay, here we connected this. Check is fine. Date is going to be April 30th. Okay, now this is what I'm going to be talking to you guys about. So we have expenses tab, right? This is when you're utilizing an account and you're paying for an expense. Okay? Right next to it, you have items. We're going to click that items tab because now this is where we're actually utilizing our actual items to go ahead and make our purchases. So we actually buy our lenses specifically from Mr. Wong and Son. Okay, so here I put lenses. Okay, and here it pops up the super zoom in cam, and I believe we make purchases of 3 of them. Is that correct?
5.
We made 5 of, okay, purchases of 5. Okay, and here because we've already entered in the item before, it automatically populated that it's going to cost me $184 each. Okay, and of course we put 5 in there, and of course if we are actually purchasing it in store, then that's where you can put your taxes in there. But if I'm ordering from them, they might be able to tax exempt me. So in this case, that's what they're going to be doing. They're going to tax exempt me. Okay? So now that I have this section right here, I'm going to go ahead and enter in, just making look at everything looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and enter it in as save and close. Okay? And let's see what this says. Now it says problem. The account check has already been, okay. So we have to change the account number. Okay. Let's say, what was that? I think the next one is 322. And there you go. Save. When we save and close, now we just actually purchased 5 cameras. Okay. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. All right. And we'll take a look at the report after we do our purchases, because I want to make sure that you keep track of it as well. Okay, every time we make a purchase. So right there, we paid a vendor for something that we purchased an inventory for, and we're going to sell it right back out to the public. So we currently have 5 lenses right now. Okay. So now that we did that one, so that's one way you can enter it in without having to deal with adjusting the inventory itself. But again, we don't know where it is because I don't have an inventory center, right? And I want to hold off because when we do a report, we can run to see how many items we actually have in stock. So we'll talk about that in a second, okay? So that's one way that you could do it. You could do it by just writing a simple thing like that. Now, of course, this is actually not recommended because what the whole purpose of using QuickBooks is to help you facilitate and make things a lot more easier and graphically organized, right? If the whole purpose of purchasing inventory is to start off with a purchase order, then you receive the inventory and then you bill against the inventory, then, you know, that's the whole purpose of using QuickBooks is it's supposed to make it that much more easier. So they would they would rather you do it through the purchase orders. But again, you don't have to. You're not mandated. It's just recommended that you should do it because it makes doing inventory a lot more easier than having to just pay the vendor, going into our reports, making sure that they went through, etc., etc. Okay? So, see if we're good on time. Okay, so I'm going to show you this one section here. Okay? So, we're going to go ahead and look at the very first one, which is utilizing the purchase orders tab. Now, if you guys remember from our accounting, right, we learned that what purchase orders does. Now, what does purchase orders or do purchase orders have an effect on a transaction at all?
No, they haven't done anything. It's just a note of kind of you're going to make the purchase. You haven't gotten anything or paid for anything.
Correct. It's basically letting know the person that you're trying to send out to this purchase order to is to let them know, hey, I'm looking to buy your stuff, but I need to get a quote. Or I'm sending in something, so then the minute you receive the inventory item itself, that's where the transaction has been completed, right? Because you have two options, right? You're either going to be given the bill right then and there, and you either pay it right then and there, or you save it as an accounts payable and pay them back later. So the notion here is it's a precursor or a pre-step before actually a transaction actually happens. So this is going to be considered a non-cash transaction, or it doesn't have an effect on it per se. So it's a non-journalizing, non-posting. That's what they called it in the book, non-posting transaction, because it doesn't really affect your it doesn't really affect your business. However, with purchase orders, though, as a rule of thumb, if you are the inventory manager or if you are the person that's in charge of just making purchase orders in general, that's perfect paper trail to keep track of every transaction, because if someone sends you just random stuff, at least you know why they're sending you these things, right? And at least you know that you can match the invoice with the actual shipment or with whatever they sent you. You can match it up and line it up to make sure that the transaction is fully met its criteria, right? If you're asking for 100 items, you better count and make sure that you received all 100 items. So again, it is a good business practice that you use purchase orders, for the reason being is to help you, again, organize whatever you're making a purchase order for, whether it's inventory, whether it's purchase of furniture, whatever it is, as long as it's some kind of formal way for you to recognize that you received an item. Okay, so now that we have purchase orders as a non-posting item, we're going to go ahead and practice how to do that. So of course, first one that you see is right on the home page. It says purchase orders. Okay, how else can you do a purchase order?
Under vendors.
Vendors
on the menu
where?
bar,
On the menu bar. Good. You could,
create purchase order.
correct. That's one. Okay, create purchase orders. Where's another way you can do this?
On the icon bar as well, right?
Icon bar, where does that take you? Which one? Where are we going on the icon bar?
I'm looking, sorry, I spoke before I had the answer.
It's under vendor.
You can go to vendors, right? Where does that take you?
Manage transactions at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. So you're talking about that. Okay, so let me go ahead and find my vendors so we can.
Sorry. You're good, because I was on the vendors, but I'm like, where is it? I forgot I could.
Okay. Yes. So when you click on the vendors on your icon bar, it takes you to your vendor center. So then here you said at the bottom you're gonna manage your transactions. Yes, you can, and enter your purchase order that way. How else can you do it?
In the bill tracker.
Bill tracker. Okay, let's look at that. Let me see bill tracker. I'm gonna go ahead and use the bill.
The one you were looking for. Okay.
You can go to manage transactions. Yes, you have it here. Manage transaction. You can create a purchase order through your bill tracker. Good. But let's go back to the vendor center. Where else can you enter in a purchase order? There's two more. Oh, I didn't even get to the vendor center. My bad.
New transaction.
New transaction at the top of the window. Yes, you can. Right? Go here, purchase order. And then lastly, what's the last one you can do?
And the icon.
Not the icon. It's in the vendor center.
Oh, hold on a minute. Right click.
You can right click on any customer or any vendor, excuse me, and then you can go ahead and create a purchase order when I find it. Purchase order. Where are you? Purchase order. Purchase orders right here. Okay. Good. Since I'm already here, who am I making a purchase order from? We are going to make a purchase order from Mr. Ace Supply. So whether I click on his name and right click and say I want to create a purchase order, his window is going to pop up with a purchase order form, and his name is going to be highlighted at the top. To verify that I am purchasing from this person, I go ahead and click tab. Okay. So now I'm in class. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and type in, I believe his class is going to be
Walnut.
Walnut Creek. Okay, Ace Supply, Walnut Creek. There you go. Date is still going to be April, I think it's April.
7th.
Yeah, April 7th. There you go. Okay. And of course, purchase order, you can type in whatever number you want. It's going to recognize it. So I'm going to put 2019 1 because I think that's what the book tells you to do. Yeah. And then, of course, the item that we're going to be purchasing is going to be, we actually are going to make purchases of a few items here. So we're going to do metal frames. Okay. And I think we're going to be purchasing 20 of them. And then we're going to also make a purchase of our wooden frames. Okay. And we're going to make a purchase of 40 of them. Okay. So as again, because we place the information in our actual item when we set it up, that it's going to cost me $5 for the wooden ones, and it's also going to cost me $2.15 for the metal ones. For any reason, you go and get another quote from this person, and they say that, oh, it's our wooden frames. We're getting low on our production of wood, so it's now $5.25. For any of that kind of reason, you can always override it, or you can always change it at any given time. You're not mandated or you're not obligated to keep this $5. It's just that then when you create your purchase orders, it fills the information for you a lot quicker. That's all it really does. But if for any reason that it is more expensive, you can change it right then and there on the purchase order itself. So there you go. It's still the same $5. As we can see here, because it's a vendor to customer relationship, they're not going to charge us sales tax. Okay. And then for here, you can put a memo here. I don't remember what I write here in my vendor message, but for my memo, I think I have
It's blank on here.
pick. I'm just gonna fill it in just so that I have something there.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, you could do thank you for doing business with me or whatever it is. Okay. So once I have all this information here, my purchase orders looks good, and I'm going to go ahead and save and close. Once I get that beep of approval, right? If I go ahead and go to my Ace Supplies and I double check all my transactions, right here, I got a purchase order for the 2019-1 for my picture frames. Okay? All right. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the next section real quick, which we'll talk about two things that are going to happen. So now that we completed our purchase order, what is the next step that we need to do?
Can I ask you, can you go back to that? Because I did everything with you guys and I don't have anything listed on there.
Okay, so
Maybe I
what's...
didn't put something.
Okay, so you go to all Ace Supply. Okay.
I'm in a supply and I have all transactions and I don't have anything.
All right, you have all transactions here, but make sure you toggle this as all and toggle this as all.
Oh, you know what? I bet you it's because it says this physical year.
Mm.
Mm,
Okay, make sure you.
yours says all there. Okay.
It's
There
all the
we
way
go.
to the
I bet
top.
you this is why. There it is. Okay, I didn't have the all on the last thing. It said this physical year. Sorry.
Correct.
Thank
No
you.
worries, no worries. So again, because we are doing retroactive transactions, we're currently in 2021. We need to go back all the way to 2019. So yes, so make sure you know this function very well because again, we're dealing with transactions that happened in the past. You want to make sure that this is always at all. Okay, this is the one that you're always going to be toggling would be this one. Okay? So again, here's my purchase order. Okay. Now, let's look at our homepage one more time. We'll talk about this real quick, and then we'll go on a break, and then we'll resume after this. So, let's look at our flow of transaction. What is actually going to happen next?
You're supposed to receive the inventory.
We're going to go receive the inventory. Now, if you guys look very, very, very carefully, right? There's a little drop down arrow. If you actually click that, you have two options.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
With and without bill.
With a bill and without a bill. And we're going to talk about that after our break. Okay, so right now it is 2:55. Go ahead and take a quick 15-minute break because there's a lot of details I need to go over in this chapter. I want to make sure we have enough time. So please be back by 3:10.
All right.
Okay? See you then.